Paula Roy joining us once more from Ottawa at Home magazine, the food editor, and we're learning quite a bit. So I love this, you know, especially talking about some of the fruits. You went to Washington.
I did.
It was almost like a conference or just a tour?
It was a Canadian press mission, so they selected 6 of us food writers from across the country and called and said, hey, how'd you like to come to Washington? I said yes pretty fast.
Yeah, I can imagine. But the information that you passed on, because of course there's this wonderful produce and how to cook with it and what to do with it, but also the preservation of these fruit as well.
That was really great. We had a workshop with a woman named Brooke Hurst Stevens, who's a certified master food preserver. Who knew there was such a thing? She studied a lot, apparently, and I've been making preserves since I was a little kid with my mom and my grandmother. I still learned a ton. It was just amazing how much I learned. Lots of things you can put in jars beyond just jams and jellies. You can put pennies in your jar, little subtle hint. Also chutneys, salsas, lots of different things. This one was a real favorite. It's apple pie preserves. And you should want to taste that Greek yogurt.
What have you done then to preserve it? Because you have to go to the basics for me.
Well, sure. So you chop up the apples, and one neat trick that we got is to put the sugar that the recipe calls for on the apples right away and let them sit for an hour, 2 hours, even overnight in the fridge, and it draws all the juice. Just with the sugar. It draws out all the juice, and it makes this rich, rich syrup. And then we put in some cinnamon and some nutmeg, and all these recipes here, along with the cookies, are on the Ottawa at Home website. And it just tastes like apple pie. Like,
and all it is really the apple preserves with yogurt.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That is unbelievable. You can take the jar home too.
I would have never thought to do that. Now, there's something that comes down to the jars because they look the same.
That's right.
But they're not.
I love making these little jars because they're great for gifts. You can make one batch and it goes a long way. But if someone gives you preserves, you got to check the jar. So this one, I'm pressing down the lid. It's nice and firm. You press down on that one. Look, it's bouncing up and down. That's not a good thing. Now that one I happen to have opened, so it is safe. But if you don't get a proper seal, the food inside isn't safe. It could be toxic.
So if you don't have that hard seal,
that's right.
Toss it.
And the way to get a good hard seal is after you make your preserves, whatever they might be, the chutney, the butter, the apple pie preserves, you boil the jars in a big pot of hot water, and that's what causes the really good seal. So that's something. It's a step a lot of people skip, and you really shouldn't skip it. Another neat thing that we learned is put the whole jar, on a rack.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's a link on our website about food safety, so you can read about that. Another neat thing that I learned is when you're making fruit preserves to use 25% unripe fruit. And that really surprised me because you think unripe, how much flavor is it going to have? What happens is that there's a lot of pectin in unripe fruit, and pectin is what makes it kind of gel or come together. So for example, this apple butter, you can see on the cracker and here in the jar, it's really thick, and that's just boiled up apples and sugar and a bit of vinegar and some spices. And the natural pectin in the apple, we didn't add any Certo or anything, is what makes it so thick. So if some of your apples are not quite as ripe as others, then you get that nice thick gel on it.
So don't wait for them to get to that
mushy stage. If they're mushy, they're going to make mushy preserves. And speaking of mushy, when you're making a chutney like this one, which is a beautiful pear chutney, you don't want to use a food processor to chop up your fruit because then it's going to look pretty much like baby food. And that's just not appealing. You look at this chutney spread out on this lovely runny brie, and that's what you want, is something where people can recognize what the fruit is rather than thinking that you've just bought some Gerber and put it on a cracker for them.
I like that. I like that description. It looks beautiful. It tastes amazing, by the way. Lots of information, everything available in a lot of the writings, everything you're doing. I know you're on Twitter and that Ottawa at Home magazine.
That's right.
Perfect. What a great trip to Washington.
It was fun.
In fact, you didn't know you were going to learn all, that's a lot of info coming out of there.
It was great.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Try this, the apple pie and the apple pie preserve on yogurt.
Yep, it's delicious.
Literally, it tastes like I'm having dessert right now.